Well, hello, welcome to day 18 of our 31 days through the book of Proverbs. Today, we're going to look at Proverbs 18. In this chapter, two things kind of jumped off of the page at me as I read through this a couple times. The one was this talk about fools, and then this talk about friends. And there's a couple of verses at the end of chapter 18 that talk directly about friendship. And in my mind, I just started to think through that a little bit after writing down some of the characteristics at the beginning of this chapter about the fools. And oftentimes, fools don't make good friends, and friends are extremely valuable, especially good, real friends that we have, deep, authentic, transparent relationships with. They can be, a huge value to our lives, and we can be a huge value to somebody else's when we have, that bond of a mature friendship. But being foolish, not only does it make it hard to be friends with somebody who's foolish, but when we do foolish things, say foolish words, it can harm and damage a friendship. So I want to just look at the contrast here between friends and fools and hopefully find some truth that we can apply. Starting right at the beginning, verse 1. Unfriendly people care only about themselves. They lash out at common sense, right? Foolish people are selfish. This is what he's telling us here, that they care only about themselves. In some translations, it says that, they separate themselves. There's isolation. So they're hard to be friends with, right? Because they want to separate, and their motivation, is themselves. It's not the interest of another. Verse 2 says, "Fools have no interest in understanding; they only want to air their own opinions." Right? They're closed-minded. Fools are closed-minded. They're not interested in learning, growing, hearing from a different opinion, a different voice, in hopes to expand their own mind. No, they're closed-minded. They only want to air their own opinions. And I know just hearing those words, we probably think about somebody who they don't want to listen to anything that anybody else has to say, but they're only going to keep repeating the same things that they say, their own opinion, whether or not it's true or not, whether or not it can be backed up with facts or data. It's their opinion they care about. They're very closed-minded. Verse 6 and 7 say that a fool's words get them into constant quarrels. They're asking for a beating. The mouth of fools are their ruin. They trap themselves with their lips, right? They create strife. They create animosity. They agitate. They aggravate with their words. That's what foolish people do. It gets them into constant quarrels. They're asking for a beating. It invites a beating, right? They antagonize another person or a group of people to the point where they're physically putting themselves in harm's way. The mouths of the fool are their ruin, right? We probably know somebody whose mouth has gotten them into trouble. And I can think personally of things that I've said in the past that have caused ruin, have caused damage in my life in certain relationships because of the words I used. It was because I was being foolish. They trap themselves with their lips. This idea that their words are really, they're painting themselves into a corner. This is what we do when we are unwise with our words. And we, our impatience, our closed-mindedness, our selfishness, and our loose lips really just get us into trouble. We go ahead into verse 19 and we start to see this idea of friends. An offended friend is harder to win back than a fortified city. Arguments separate friends like a gate locked with bars. And we see that the words invite quarrels, right? They create arguments, fights. So we need to be wise with our words in order to protect our friendships. But an offended friend is harder to win back than a fortified city. This mental picture that he's painting of a city that's, surrounded by tall stone walls, thick, sometimes multiple walls, the outer and inner walls to fortify a city. And he's painting this picture that a friend that we've offended is harder to win back than it would be to win that fortified city. Just how deep the damage can be with our words. And arguments separate friends like gates with locked bars. Not just a gate, not just a fence, but with a locked bar, right? Very difficult to get through without the key. But this is what arguments can do when we're foolish with our words, and the damage it can create in our friendships. And then in verse 24, he says, there are friends who destroy each other, with quotations around friends, right? There are friends who destroy each other. Because would we really be friends if we're destroying each other? what is the depth of our friendship? How much do we really value each other when we're trying to destroy each other? But a real friend, he says, sticks closer than a brother, right? There's loyalty here. It runs deep in a real friendship. So I hope that we're looking for friendships. I hope we're looking for the people that God has put in our lives around us that we can develop real friendships with, to create value for them and for us. And I know that oftentimes we find ourselves in places where we do feel alone, that maybe we don't have people in our lives that we can be friends with, and it's easy to kind of, turn our view and our perspective on ourselves and to find ourselves in a negative space, um, questioning why we don't have good friends, and I can find myself in this place at times, um, and I remind myself of what I learned, in elementary school. If I want friends, be a friend. So maybe God is prompting us to go out and be a good friend to somebody. Maybe there's somebody who needs us. Rather than waiting for people to come to us, maybe we need to go and be a friend. And quickly we find that we have friends. So maybe we need to just be a little bit more proactive about developing friendships. Um, God may be using us to help build up, speak life to, encourage, strengthen, support another person through a friendship. So let's look for those opportunities. But when I start to think about friends, I always think of the words of Jesus from John 15:3. And he said, there's no greater love than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. And Jesus laid down his life for us. So even when we feel like we have no friends around us, we always do, because Jesus loved us enough to die for us. And he is beyond a friend to us. But may we remember what he's done for us and wants to do through us, and be a friend of the people around us, and make sure that our foolishness, which can get quickly translated to foolish words, cause damage to the friendships that we have. May we value our friends today. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow for Proverbs 19. Thanks for joining me.